Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Rustabout Collector here, and today we have the all-new Vintage Collection Phase 2 212th Battalion Clone Trooper Army Builder Pack. This is a Hasbro Pulse exclusive, and it did not go up for pre-order, it just went up for standard order. You ordered and it shipped pretty quickly after that, which is something that they did announce would happen with this pack. They weren't going to mess around with pre-orders and selling out pre-orders, so they simply put it up on their website. It is currently in stock still, and I will have a link for it down in the description of this video so you can get your very own. This Army Builder pack had a lot of us really excited. It's pretty great, but it's far from perfect, and we're going to get into that. This is the packaging that it will arrive in, kind of the standard Army Builder pack that we've been getting with all of the releases, from the Phase 1 Clone Trooper to the Rebels, the Stormtroopers, all of that. It's a pretty cool piece of box art here. It has a bunch of 212 Clone Troopers with Waxer right up front. It's a little bit stylized. Some of the proportions on these armor pieces are a little bit wonky, especially in the helmet, but you know, for a piece of box art like this, it looks fitting, it looks cool, it's, you know, it's got a style all of its own, and I like it. Now, this may not be the ideal box design for someone that likes to collect on-card, in-box figures. You know, you can't see anything here. I think this is very fitting for an Army Builder pack where you're buying it to fill out an army. You're buying a bunch of the same figures to army build. That's what this pack is designed for. And I think for what it is, it's a pretty nice box design. Opening it up, we can see here what we get inside. The 4 figures are individually packed in little tissue paper wrappers, and they all have blasters to go along with them, which are, oddly enough, also individually packed as well. Once everything's out of the box, you end up with 3 standard 212th Clone Troopers and 1 Clone Trooper Waxer. I think he's a lieutenant or a sergeant. I don't know, he's technically an officer, so you kind of get like 1 officer and 3 standard troopers. And this has been officially confirmed to be a Clone Wars Army Builder pack. Now what that means is that initially these figures did not have the painted brow lines on the helmets. However, people were complaining in the comments and just directly to Hasbro, so they did a running change and added the brow lines. Now I ordered 2 of these packs from Hasbro the day that these dropped, and I still got brow line painted helmets. I have seen a few people get ones without the brow line. I don't know what determines getting one with and without the brow line painted. It seems to me like the number of figures with the brow line painted is probably higher than the number of figures without the brow line painted. So now if you order these from Hasbro, I'm fairly confident you'll end up getting the ones with the painted brow line, and I think that those do look better. Despite them being supposedly a Clone Wars appearance, this is still a realistic body mold, and so I think that they should stick with a realistic interpretation. However, that also means there will be another inconsistency between the animated and realistic style of paint apps, and you can notice this down here at the ankles. I initially thought that all of my 212th in both of my packs were misprinted, and the paint apps on their ankles were painted too high. A prime example is looking at the old antenna mold figure on the left and the new Andor mold figure on the right. It's just not set low enough on the ankles, and again, I thought that that was a misprint until I saw these Clone Wars renders, and I realized that in the Clone Wars, the 212th have much higher ankle markings. But oddly enough, both in the Clone Wars and here now in figure form, Waxer actually has the correct ankle markings. For whatever reason, they animated him correctly, but they did not animate the 212th correctly. And another difference between the realistic and the animated is that the markings on the crest do not go fully across the back of the helmet. That's another thing that we saw with the Black Series version of the 212th as well. So once again, some of the deco hits for this figure are going to be explicitly animated. Now with all that being said, is that a deal breaker? You know, the elevated deco on the ankles and the half crest painting, stuff like that. Personally, I gotta say it really doesn't bother me all that much. I wish it was different, but it really doesn't ruin this pack or make it any less of a 212th Army Builder. I will say that the addition of those painted brows really does make this pack win me over that much more. I still probably would have bought this pack and I could have just painted the brow line in, but the fact that they went ahead and did a running change to improve from the Clone Wars to the more realistic style, I appreciate that, and that does add some points in terms of how cool this pack is. I always prefer realistic figures to be realistic and animated figures to be animated, so I do prefer having the brow lines painted, and I would have preferred the deco to be a little bit more realistic as well. And for accessories with these Clone Troopers, you get 4 of the shorter DC-15 carbines and 2 of these DC-15 long rifles. These are the same new molds that we saw with the Andor Clone Trooper, and unfortunately they are still cast in that very bendy, gummy plastic, and That is one of my major gripes with both the Andor Clone Trooper and this one. The blasters are just too gummy. The mold is fantastic. It's a great realistic interpretation of the DC-15. It doesn't have any animated elements in it. It looks really good, but it just needs to be cast in a slightly sturdier plastic. So with this pack, all the figures are going to be on the same mold. We'll look at it once with just the standard 212th clone. This is the all-new Andor Clone Trooper mold. I've already done an in-depth review on that single-carded plain version of this mold, but there are some subtle differences between this one and that previous one I do want to talk about, and we will get into that. But overall, it's the same clone mold that we've already taken a look at. It's got some really solid articulation. Up top, it does have the removable helmet with the really nice face sculpt of Tamara Morrison. This is once again the same head sculpt that came with the ARC Troopers. It's a little bit smaller and it has more of a pointed Clone Wars style crew cut going on there. It does have that double ball joint that gives it a pretty good range of motion forward, back, and even with the helmet on, you still do get some good expression with that. The shoulders are hinge and swivel, so you can spin them all the way around. You can actually tuck that shoulder pad underneath the chest plate like so, but it's also soft enough plastic that you could flex it over top of the chest plate if you want to do it that way. The elbows are single jointed. You can take them into 90, hinge and swivel at both wrists, in and out on one, and up and down on the other. Ball jointed torso that gives you some good flex forward, back, all the way around. And also what I didn't notice on the Andor clone review is that this also pivots beneath the belt. That little abdomen piece is actually a swivel as well, which is just a nice additional piece of articulation there. The hips are ball jointed. You can swing them out to there, back to there. You can side twist them that way. There is a thigh swivel. There's also a single jointed knee that can get you just past 90. Hinge and rocker at the foot can be pointed to there, flexed forward to there, and rocked side to side. So all in all, there's nothing new here apart from it being a all-new Clone Trooper mold for 2023. This does trump a lot of the previous clone molds that we've gotten, despite it having some issues in terms of proportion, and of course some of the deco on the Andor clone's helmet was a bit terrible, a bit abysmal, one might even say. But for the most part, I gotta say this is a really solid update to the Clone Trooper mold. I'm excited to see what Hasbro redecos this as, repaints this as. You know, I would take really any other legions on this body mold. I hope we see 501st, I hope we see Shock Troopers and Camino Guard and, you know, every possible redeco of this body mold. I would absolutely love to get it. And I hope along the way that means they fix some of the problems that we were seeing before with the helmet deco and stuff like that. Speaking of that, putting it side by side here with the Andor Clone Trooper, it does seem like they've improved some of the paint apps on these helmets. I have not gotten a single one of the 212 clones that has the visor shifted down, and yet all of my Andor clones have some sort of misprint on the visor. So it does seem like they've taken some lessons from this figure and applied them to this figure. And while I'm still not totally sold on the sculpt for this removable helmet, it's definitely improved upon from this Andor mold. And I might just be crazy, it's really, really difficult to tell, but I think that these 212 clones are maybe just a shade brighter white than the Andor clones. I know in my review I showed that these are a little bit more eggshell, a little bit more off-white than your standard Clone Trooper, and these are just maybe like a shade lighter, a shade more pure white than these, which I definitely don't have a problem with. I think both were fine. I wasn't really upset that this one was more off-white. I'm definitely not upset that this one is a little bit brighter. It's just interesting to note the differences between two clones that were released really, really close together. In addition to the three 212 clones, you do also get Clone Trooper Waxer here, a true fan favorite. I definitely like Waxer and Boyle. I definitely hope we see a vintage collection Boyle to go alongside this Waxer, and I think they did a really good job with the deco here. You know, they got the correct markings where he has this vertical stripe instead of the horizontal one. He's got the hash marks here, as well as here on his helmet. The solid orange gloves, the solid orange knee pads, all of that stuff is correct for Waxer, I'm pretty sure. And even though it's super small, the little print there of Numa looks absolutely amazing. I really appreciate that they got all of those little details included on this figure, the little hash marks. Even the little battle droid here is painted next to all these hash marks. I mean, all these little fine details look absolutely incredible at the 3 3/4 inch scale. I don't think that they could have done nearly as good a job, you know, even 5 years ago. And of course, he also has a removable helmet, which you can take off to reveal that unique face sculpt. I really wish they had used this head sculpt in the Bad Batch pack. I don't know why they didn't use this one. Instead, they gave him hair, which was really odd for Captain Rex. But I digress. You know, this is a good head sculpt for Waxer. They've got the little soul patch there, a little bit of like stubble around the mouth and everything. And once again, the face printing here is just absolutely incredible at the 3 3/4 inch scale. They really have just nailed the technology to make super, super detailed face prints at the 3 3/4 inch scale, and I am so impressed with it. Now, just like with the Clone Wars deco, I do have my issues with them including Waxer in a pack like this. I think that they should avoid using named characters in army builder packs. Instead of Waxer, we could have gotten maybe a 212th ARF trooper or just a generic clone trooper lieutenant or something, maybe as like a reference to the Routine Valor comic pack. Something just to make it still a true army builder, you know? I don't want an army of Waxers. I wouldn't mind an army of 212th ARF troopers though. And so once again, I don't think that it's necessarily a deal breaker to have Waxer in here, just like it's not a deal breaker to have the animated paint deco on the 212th. However, it is kind of a drawback. It does limit the number of these packs that I'm going to want to buy. Like I said, I did buy 2 of them, and I probably will take this extra Waxer and turn it into a boil if I can. But I definitely would see the appeal of buying several more of these if this was just another version of a generic trooper. Again, some variety is nice, so either give me 4 212th clones with unique head sculpts under each one, or give me 3 troopers and like an ARF trooper, a lieutenant, unnamed commander, you know, give me a generic officer and then 3 generic troopers. Something like that would make this more of a perfect army builder pack. With Waxer, it just detracts a little bit from its army builder-ness, you know. Now, there is one other thing I noticed with these figures, and that is that there are seemingly 2 different size helmets here. You have a smaller one on Waxer, and that is consistent with both my Waxer figures. It is a smaller helmet. Then you have more of this Andor clone-sized helmet here on the 212th, and then some of the 212th have the smaller Waxer-sized helmet. Now, this might just be a running change, or it might be some sort of production issue, but I will say that this smaller helmet, although it looks good on the Clone Trooper body, it does not want to come off very easily. You can take it off of Waxer a little bit easier because he doesn't have the sculpted hair, so it's just a little bit more of a narrow profile. However, trying to take it off of the clones with the hair sculpt, it's definitely a trick. It's not as easy as I would like it to be, and it definitely makes me worried about paint rub on the painted hair here. It seems to be kind of random. I think I got 1 of these in one pack and then 2 in the other pack, so some clones will have the smaller helmet, some will have the normal sized Andor clone helmet, and if it is a running change to correct the oversized helmet from before, I'm not sure I'm a fan of it if it means that there's going to be paint rub on the head sculpts underneath. Once again, with issues like this, I just wish that they would do a removable head sculpt like they did with some of the Mandalorians, where you would just pop the head off and then pop the helmet on as a separate piece. That allowed them to have much more accurate scaling and much more accurate sculpt work. While I do appreciate a removable helmet, if it comes at the cost of either the paint underneath or the scaling overall, I would just appreciate swappable heads. I think that that would work so much better with these clone troopers. Again, the smaller helmet does look better, but I don't want that to come at the cost of any of the paint apps underneath. But ultimately, I still really like this. I'm really glad to see that they've gone the route of using this new Andor mold in this Army Builder pack. Gives me hope that they will pretty much officially retire the skinny mold forever, possibly, and just use this mold for everything. I would love to see Phase 1 troopers on this mold as well. And really, like I said before, any Clone Trooper Legion repaint that they want to do on this mold, I would absolutely be behind. As I pointed out in this video, I think they still need to rework some of the deco hits on the helmet. They still need to work on how all of that fits together with animated versus realistic deco. They really need to just do either a fully animated line or a fully realistic line. There shouldn't be some sort of like weird mishmash between the two. Just give us realistic or give us animated on an animated body. Now, one of the other drawbacks that people were mentioning with this pack is the price. It does retail for $59.99, and then once you factor in shipping, that does bump it up to like $75, I think. There is no free shipping with Hasbro, and that's kind of frustrating, especially for an Army Builder pack. You're basically paying full retail price for these at, you know, roughly $15 a piece. The previous Army Builder pack was $45, I think. It may have been $49.99. Either way, it does have a significant price increase from that previous pack, which is a bit disappointing to see. These do have more deco, but I don't think that there's enough new deco here to justify that price increase. So once again, this pack is far from perfect, and I wouldn't recommend going out and buying 6 of these, to build a immediate 212th army. I would say if you're really a fan of this new mold, or you're a really big fan of the 212th, maybe buy one of these packs. For now, buy one of these packs, have it locked in so you have it in your collection, and then wait for a sale. The previous army builder packs have all gone on sale at some point, usually for between 15 and 20% off. I think that would be the perfect time to maybe pick up 2 or 3 of these for a true army builder experience. You could either customize or sell off the extra waxers, and then you have a pretty significant army of this new mold 212th trooper. Now for some quick comparisons, here he is next to every previous Phase 2 212th clone trooper. As you can see, his deco is significantly lighter than any of the previous ones. That's once again just one of those symptoms of it being an animated design versus the realistic design. I do wish it was at least a little bit darker to blend in a little bit more with these realistic ones, especially my favorite one here with the antenna mold. I would say it's definitely closer in shade, in hue, to this Routine Valor Comic Pack 212, but as you can see here, the shade of orange has changed at least a little bit between different versions in the 3 3/4 inch scale, so having a new one that doesn't quite match the old ones is okay. It's not ideal, but again, it's one of those things that, to me at least, it's not a deal breaker. If it is for you, that's fine, and that's precisely why I want to show this, make people aware of it, that hey, this one isn't going to color match your antenna mold clones. It's not going to color match your skinny mold clones. It's going to be its own special shade of orange, but maybe you don't have any of these and you just want an army of 212th clones. And if that's the case, then this is perfect because they will all match each other. And that's one of the things that I do appreciate about packs like this. There are still people that are new to collecting, especially new to collecting clone troopers. There's kids that grew up with Season 7 and the Bad Batch, and now they want to get clone troopers. They didn't grow up with the 2005 through 2015 era like so many of us did, and now they're limited to secondhand prices on eBay and stuff for a 212th clone trooper, where the old figures can go upwards of $25 a piece. Getting a 4-pack for $15 a piece isn't great, but at least it's something. At least there are some clone troopers on the market that are brand spanking new. You don't have to worry about them being broken or anything like that when you buy them secondhand. You get them complete, you get them new, and there is something exciting about getting an action figure brand new, getting that experience of opening it. And here he is next to other members of the 212th, like the Legacy Collection Commander Cody, the Saga Collection Commander Cody, the Airborne Trooper, and the 212th AT-RT Driver. I still think, despite some of the color differences, these new figures will fit in very nicely with other members of the collection. Possibly the most glaring difference is going to be that these older figures actually have a lot of weathering and grime going on with them, and these guys are all minty fresh and clean, and maybe if you gave them a paint wash or some weathering, they would blend in even better with these older figures. But still, even fresh from the box, I think that they fit in fairly nicely. This is definitely not the first time that some figures released by Hasbro are weathered and some of them are not, so it's not going to look all that out of place in a 3 3/4 inch collection, but of course there is always that option to customize. So with all that said, I am pretty fond of this pack for what it is. It has its flaws, it's not perfect, but I'm still pretty happy with it. I'm hoping that this review serves as kind of like a helpful look at these figures, so that if you're kind of on the fence about this pack, if you're not sure about some of the deco or some of the quality control issues with the Andor clone, things like that, I hope I was able to answer those. But let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on this pack, if you like it, if you don't like it, if you picked one up, if you're still kind of waiting for a sale because maybe the price wasn't quite right. Let me hear from you down in the comments. I would love to know what kind of the community's response is to army builders like this. But that is where I'm wrapping this video up. So as always, there's a link down in the description to my Instagram if you want to follow me over there for other toy related content like toy photography, and also I post links to things like this when they go live. I post those on my story so that everyone has a chance to get their hands on new figures right when they drop. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening, noon, or night, depending on when you're watching this video, of course. And as always, I'll be sure to catch you all in the next video.